Sachin already introduced me. I think most of you already know me. There are new faces too. Yeah, today agenda is an Angular introduction, then Angular learning path, and latest version of Angular, then best practices, and resources and Q&A section. Before moving to Angular, I think better to discuss about single page application. Yeah, single page application in a web application that interact with the user by dynamically retrieve the current page rather than the load entire new pages from the server. It means it's a single page application fully contained in the application in browser. We don't need to request for the new pages in time to time. So we can ensure that our application is speed and higher performance and page loading very faster. And also we can avoid the page refreshment. This is the advantage of the single page application. Nowadays, we can see in the real world many single page applications like Google, Facebook, Airbnb, Netflix, and so many single page applications. Okay, now we can move to the Angular. Angular is a platform and front-end framework for building single page application using HTML, CSS, and TypeScript. And it is developed and maintained by Google. Angular is oriented to the developed front end and uncoupled of the back end. So you can select back end as whatever the Java, C# with the .NET, or there are another popular tech stack like MeanStack in here, Mongo, ExpressJS, and Node with Angular. So there are no any high tight coupling with the back end with the when we using front end as Angular. Okay, you may have some confusion. What is the Angular? What is the AngularJS? Basically, first version of the Angular we are called as AngularJS. It is released in 2010. After that, they released the Angular in 2016. Then there are frequently released version twice the year. Now latest version is Angular 13, which is released in last week in 4th of November. When we compared Angular with AngularJS, it is made biggest difference between AngularJS versus Angular. AngularJS totally based on the JavaScript, while Angular based on the TypeScript. This is the main difference between Angular and AngularJS. And AngularJS basically based on the MVC architecture, and there is a central component, while Angular has a modular based architecture and component as the built-in blocks of the Angular. I think now you have a clear idea about what is the Angular and AngularJS. We can move on to the next slide. This is Stack Overflow trends. In x-axis, you can see the year. Y-axis, you can see the number of Stack Overflow question in the month. You can see AngularJS becoming a die, while Angular is maintain their stability. And NPM trends also, you can see there are very less NPM download for the AngularJS, while Angular increasing their popularity. Okay, now you have some idea about what is the Angular, what is the AngularJS. Okay, now we can see what are the reason to we can select the Angular as your application front-end your front-end framework. Okay, I think biggest advantage is using Angular. It is developed across the all platform. You can use the Angular for mostly we are using Angular for the web application. Then you can use that Angular for your mobile application with the Ionic, Cordova, or native script. In the earlier around 2016-17, Ionic is the most popular. Now it is become native script in the trend. And believe me, you can develop the desktop application also using Angular with the support of Electron.js. That is the I think one of the biggest reason to Angular becoming popular. And Angular is a complete framework. It has many more features. Angular is a full page with the routing and that the HTTP things and form validation. Everything is there. You can do whatever thing with using Angular framework. Another thing is a material design. There is a material library. You can create very user-friendly and with good user experience interfaces using Angular material design. And the community support. When it's become the community support, Angular has a good support in the Stack Overflow, in the Git, and also backed by the Google. So when it's come to community support, Angular also has a good plus point. And then faster development process. You may see heard about Angular CLI. Using Angular CLI, you can within few seconds you can create the component, you can create services, you can build the project, you can deploy. What most of the thing you can do few seconds using Angular CLI. So your development process will be also fast when you select the Angular as your front end framework. And next thing is a testable code. In Angular, you may heard about Karma, you may heard about Jasmine, Cypress.js, those kind of framework you can use for the test by the component wise, module wise, and every piece of code. Okay, let's move on to the. Okay, now we have idea about the Angular history and AngularJS and why we choose the Angular. This time to learn about how to set up Angular in your environment. So basically you need a text editor. I highly recommend to use the VS Code, but you may use the Atom or WebStorm or whatever text editor you like. But when it's come to VS Code, it has good features and extension plugins and many plus point. And you need to select you need to download and install Node.js for the package management. And you may have already experience with the Java with the Maven. In when it's the Java, you use Maven for your dependency control. When it's come to Angular, we are using npm for our dependency related management thing. And then, as I mentioned, we can use Angular CLI for the as an Angular command prompt. Yes, once you install those things and set up the Angular CLI within few commands, you can develop your first Hello World Angular application using ng new. You can create new project using ng new with the project name. Then using cd command, you can go through the project and simply ng serve -- open. You can open your project in your default browser. Right, now we have the idea about the Angular history and why we choose Angular, and you have the idea about how to set up Angular project in your in your local environment. Now get some idea about basic features of Angular. In here, you can see modules, component, data binding, services, directive, and dependent injection. Those are the basic and valuable features of Angular. Right, modules. Basically, modules are group of component, services, providers, or other code file whose scope defined by the containing ng module. In every Angular application has at least one ng module card which name in app.module. And large application, you can have many feature module. In here, if you are in the develop huge industrial application, you have to work with the many parts, like you have to develop the reports, you have to maintain the user related thing, you have related the customer related thing, you have to maintain the something like department like this. Then you can divide your application to the simple core modules. That is the I think what main thing in the Angular modules, you can break down your application to feature modules. This is the root module class. This is the as I mentioned, our application should have at least one module class. This is the root module class for the any Angular application. You can see using that annotation ng module, we can declare the app module class, and we can add the declaration array to our component, imports array to our other modules like a form module, like reactive form module, or there are maybe third-party modules like material modules. And we can add the services to that providers array. Bootstrap is the starting point of our application. Right. Then we can go to the component. After the modules, component is the another important part. Component define and control the views. It is like a basic built-in blocks of the application. Angular create, update, destroy component as a user move in through the application using lifecycle hooks. Uh, Basically, in your your interface, in your user interface can have the navigation bar, headers, footers, and top navigations. Likewise, we can then we can divide the application. We can break down your UI to the separate module for the site navigation, but we can have another separate module for the separate component for the top nav bar. We can have another separate component for the headers. Now we can have another separate component for the footer. Even we can create the component for the customizer button also. So the advantage of the component, we can break down the application in small built-in blocks. Right, this is the example for the component class. You can see here, use component annotation, the declare a component. Right. Then data binding also valuable part in the Angular. We can bind the events to the code listening to changes as a key press event or marvelous event. We can bind with the function using event binding. And property binding, we can bind the DOM element to field defined in the component. And most valuable part is the two-way binding. We can share the data between view to component and component to view using this two-way binding. Right. After that, service also some important part. Basically, service is a typically class with a narrow, well-defined purpose. It should do something specific, can do it well. This is a single return because it is get initiate only once during the lifetime of the application. Most of time we are using for the services for the call the backend APIs, and we can write those HTTP client services in a separate service class, and we can inject to our component using dependency injection. Important thing is those services singleton or in only one time initiate during the application lifestyle. This is the example for the service. You can see that injectable annotation. We can define the services using that injectable annotation. In here, you can see the example service also. We can use the HTTP calls for the services using Angular services. Then directives. Directives are the classes that added additional behavior to element to your Angular application. There is an ng class. You can add or remove the set of CSS classes. Using ng style directive, you can add or remove the set of HTML style. Using ng model, as I mentioned, we can two-way data binding an HTML element to our controllers. Using ng if command, we can condition, create or dispose of subviews from the template. And ng for we can repeat the node for the each item in the list. And using ng switch, we can set up directive that switch among the alternative views. Yeah, now we have some idea about the basic features of Angular. As I mentioned in the last week, released the latest version of Angular. Here I can see they have done some specific thing. They are end of support for IE 11. It is mean IE 11 is a Internet Explorer. Now there are no more support for the Internet Explorer. So now you can use the CSS variables and latest CSS animations and any modern thing with your Angular application. So we don't need to depend with the Internet Explorer. and they are stop the view engine. View engine means a legacy engine. Now they are using a new only IVY engine for their rendering things, and they are improved the Angular CLI, and TypeScript 4.4 support has been added. I have put the link to the, you can get the idea about the latest Angular features. Yeah, this is the main part of the our tech talk, best practices in Angular. Right. In here, we are going to discuss about project structure, naming guidance, single responsibility, reusable component, return the proper type, avoid any, organize import, feature modules, lazy loading, environment variable, prevent memory leak, and ES lint. Yes, this is the recommended way to the organize your Angular project. You can see under the app, there is a shared module, core module, and any number of feature module. Under share module, as I mentioned, you can put the under share module, under the component, you can put that shareable component like navigation, site navigation related component, and header related component, and footer related component. Likewise, you can include the shareable component and directives and pipes. Under core module, you can include the services and authentication related model guards and login related guards and models. You can include those kind of things under core module. Then you can divide the feature module to your application, likewise report module or user module. According to your application, you can create the feature module under your main application. Right. Naming guidance. We can use Pascal case for the class name. Pascal case mean upper camel case. Okay, we can use a Pascal case for the class name. We can use Pascal case for the interface. We can use the Pascal case for types and enums values, and we should use the camel case for function names and the constants. And related thing, you can put under that customized environment file. Right. Another thing is the ESLint. ESLint is like a code analyzer. When you are using Java, you already use like a SonarQube. When it's come to the Angular also have the ESLint. It is a code listing. It's a type of static analyze that is frequently used to find the problematic patterns of code that doesn't adhere to certain style guideline. In using Angular CLI, you can simply install the npm install ESLint, and your code you can follow the good practices using ESLint as well. Okay, now we have the clear idea about Angular history, Angular and Angular best features and Angular best practices. I think now it is better to go with UI libraries. Yeah, we can use the UI library as Angular Material, Bootstrap, ONG Bootstrap, PrimeNG. There are many more UI libraries, but I recommended to use Angular Material because in using Angular Material, you can create good user-friendly and good user experienceable application. And Bootstrap also has good advantage in when it's come to mobile, but Bootstrap has some plus point. But using Angular Material with Flex module, you can achieve that responsive views as well. When you install after you added the Angular CLI, you can simply add the Angular Material library using ng add Angular Material command. I have put the documentation in here. You can go through the Angular Material documentation, and you can get some hands-on experience with Angular Material. Okay, now let's have some resources for the Angular. In this Angular documentation is one of the best feature. In here you have the many tutorials and the style guideline, and here you have the many resources under Angular introduction, Angular documentation. Then there are good blog is Angular University and blog angular.io and Angular Wiki and Angular Material UI Component Library. Okay, those are the main features and Angular related best practices and some resources. Let's talk about if you have any questions.
Looks like no one has any questions so far, Dinuka.
Yeah.
Hello, the Dinuka Dasan here.
Okay, that's one. Yeah.
Kind of practical question when it comes to when we are developing for special clients.
Yeah.
When it comes to practical, is that fine to use external libraries if we develop if we are developing something, let's say for Alliance or Dialog, is that fine to use external libraries?
Yeah, actually, it is a very good question. When we use the external libraries, we may have to face some issues. As I mentioned earlier, Angular is a very frequently update. In last this year also they released 2 versions. In last year also 2. So we are very frequently update. If we use some external libraries, we not sure they are also they updated with the latest version. When we want to update our application but our library is still in the oldest Angular version, then we may have to face some issues, no? So I always try to develop using Angular inbuilt features and Angular related libraries without, and try to use a minimal number of external libraries.
Okay, Dinuka. Okay, thanks.
Dinuka, Ajit here.
Yeah. Okay.
So can you explain like you can, let's say like you can implement an Angular application. So what are the options that you are having in order to deploy your application? So can you explain the deployment options available for Angular application?
Can you describe the question?
Yeah. So let's say like for example, there are certain application servers, right? So
Yeah.
there are cloud environments where you can go ahead and deploy your Angular application. So basically host your application. So what are the
Yeah.
options available once you implement your Angular application other than the local host?
Yeah, basically, we are mostly uses NGRX. And actually, I also have not have much experience with the deployment thing. Mostly, we are using that server environment.
Okay.
Dinuka,
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
Could you can you explain a little more about how we can share the data among the components?
Yeah. We can have, basic, as I mentioned earlier, I mentioned the Angular services. That is the most useful way to share the data between component. You can define the Angular services as I mentioned using service annotation. Then you can use in dependent injection. You can share those things among the component. And also you can use that parent when we have the parent-child relation. You can use the input and output annotations as well. Using those kind of thing, you can share the data between component. And also you can use the shareable services also. It also a good option to share the data between component. And when if we are using Angular material, using Angular material dialog box also, you can use the share between the data.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Devan.
Okay.
Dinuka, since we have like good participation from the QA team also, like any suggestions or any best practices for them to follow, like when they are testing single page applications, especially Angular applications?
Yeah, when as Ajit mentioned, testing for the Angular testing, we can use the unit test using Jasmine, Karma, or Cypress. When testing the Angular, we can test the Angular, even the module, even the small component wise. We can write the test using expect.ts file for the each and every component. So in the we can test the each of piece of code in the Angular using that testable component.
Yeah, thanks, Dinuka. I think that's one of the important area team, like since most of the individuals are coming from the Java background, they may familiar with the JUnit, or if they are from .NET N unit. So, but when it's come to single page application, so if everybody can adhere to unit testing, so that
Yeah.
will really help you. Like most of the engineers, they are not following unit testing for the front end application development. So I think that's the process. Personally, I'm encouraging all the individuals to follow, like even the QA team members. That's the new area actually they can learn and master. So when they are doing certain automations, testing related activities, actually they can use those libraries in order to meet their requirement.
Other than Jasmine and Karma, nowadays Cypress JS also becoming the popular for the Angular related testing.
Team, any questions?
Dinuka, good afternoon. Devin here. I would
Yeah.
like to know how we can ensure security when it comes to developing in Angular. Some tips that you have gained experience over the years. I would like to know how we can ensure the security on Angular.
Yeah, in Angular, basically default have the now features to prevent dependency injection, like those things. Even we can use the auth guard and auth route and some token based authentication. We can use those things for the security in Angular application.
Dinuka, then here again, I think this is not related to Angular. Actually,
Yeah.
I have seen this scenario with one of the projects that I'm working, and
Yeah.
on their sides, there was a scenario to implement a single SSO, single sign-on. On their side, they just pass the usernames and password using the URL without encrypting any of that.
Yeah.
They just trust the VPN connection. So when it comes to developing application, will that be a good development, or don't we have to switch on to some kind of public and private key encryption?
Yeah, since we are using HTTPS, it already has some encryption, even that in some kind of sensitive data, if we are developing banking related application, we are putting some RSA or AES related encryption. Angular also support AES encryption, even an RSA encryption. What we are only when we are using more sensitive application like banking application, we are using those high advanced encryption method. In the non-sensitive application, we are just trust the HTTPS and other when critical time in sensitive data we are using that RSA or AES encryption.
Thank you, Dinuka.
Yeah. Team, any more questions for Dinuka?
Yeah, Sachini.
Yes, Ajit.
Hello. Yeah. So what we should do actually, we should create a forum so where everybody can put their questions, and then whoever has mastered like certain areas, actually they should be able to answer and support. So by that way, actually we should be able to help each other, especially the individuals who are working in the project. Other than that, like if they are doing some R&D or self-learning, when they have any questions related to Angular, they should be able to post it over there and get the support. So we'll create that forum for this, especially in this group, interest group. Then we should be able to share the information with each other and support each other within Acentura.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, Ajit. We can do that.
And I would like to thank Dinuka on behalf of Acentura, so taking this, even he's having a busy schedule, so taking this and put his personal time in order to prepare all the training materials and share this detail with the team. So moving forward, actually, we can discuss more advanced level and practical examples with the team. So once they have the basic understanding about the framework.
Yes, thank you, Ajit. And in addition to what Ajit said, thank you, Dinuka, for giving us your time and experience that you have been in Angular and sharing that exposure with all the rest of our employees here. Yeah, so if there's nothing else to add, we can conclude today's session. For all employees who could not make it for the session today, the recording clip of this training will be available on the MS Teams chat. So you can access that. And yes, that's about it. Anything else to add, Dinuka, Ajit?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. This is my first tech talk. Thanks for the executive committee in Acentura for giving this opportunity to me. And thank all the participants as well.
And then, but this may be your first, but not the last. Okay.
Okay, this is the very first time after the school days.
Okay, great. Once again, thank you, Dinuka. Thanks, Ajit. And thank you, everyone, for joining today's session today. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Dinuka.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dinuka.
all.